Hello, sir, watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the news. Here are tonight's headlines.
North Korea fired a suspected submarine-launched ballistic missile into the sea today.
The Metro Manila Council has allowed accompanied minors to travel throughout the region, which is currently under the more relaxed Alert Level 3.
Switzerland's glaciers are continuing to shrink as a result of climate change, even if snowfall was heavy this year and the summer comparatively cool.
Greece handed over the Olympic flame to organizers of the 2022 Beijing Winter Games a day after the lighting ceremony was disrupted by activists calling for the event to be postponed.
First, North Korea fired a suspected submarine-launched ballistic missile into the sea on Tuesday, according to the South's military, the nuclear-armed country's latest advance in weapons technology and one that could give it a second strike capability. The test came with both Koreas building up their weapons capabilities in what could become an arms race on the peninsula, and with the Washington-Pyongyang dialogue at a standstill. The short-range ballistic missile suspected to be an SLBM was fired from Sinpo into the sea east of the peninsula, according to the Seoul's Joint Chief of Staff in a statement. Sinpo is a major naval shipyard with satellite photographs previously showing submarines at the facility, and the statement added South Korean and U.S. intelligence are closely analyzing for additional detail. The key question will be whether it was fired from a working submarine or an underwater platform or barge. A proven submarine-based missile capability would take the North's arsenal to a new level, allowing deployment far beyond the Korean peninsula and a second strike capability in the event of an attack on its military bases.
The Alert Level System, or ALS, initially piloted in Metro Manila, will soon be implemented in other provinces starting October 20th until the end of the month. In a palace press briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque cited the drop in coronavirus cases and the improvement of healthcare utilization rate as reasons to expand the ALS. Take a look.
Simula bukas, 20 na Oktubre, ay in-expand na po ang alert level system sa labas ng Metro Manila. Nasa alert level 4 po ang Negros Oriental at Davao Occidental. Nasa alert level 3 po ang Cavite, Laguna, Rizal, Siquijor, Davao City at Davao del Norte. Habang nasa alert level 2 naman po ang Batangas, Quezon Province, Lucena City, Bohol, Cebu City, Lapu-Lapu City, Mandaue City, Cebu Province, Davao de Oro, Davao del Sur at Davao Oriental. Magtatagal po ito hanggang katapusan Oktubre 31, 2021. Tingnan natin ang mga pinapayagan at hindi pinapayagan sa Alert Level 4, Alert Level 3 at Alert Level 2. Now, simulan po natin sa dine-in services, no? Sa indoor po, sa Alert Level 4 ay 10% lang po. Sa Alert Level 3, ito po ay 30%. Sa Alert Level 2, ito po ay 50%. At sa Alert Level 1 ay 100%. Pero kinakailangan po sa indoor dining, para sa mga bakunadong individual lang, at lahat po ng mga manggagawa sa indoor dining ay bakunado rin. Sa outdoor po, ang Alert Level 4, outdoor dining 30%, Alert Level 3, 50%, Alert Level 2, 70%. Now, siyempre po, ang take-out delivery ay 100% kahit ano pa pong alert level. Uulitin ko po, hindi tayo nakikipag-away sa mga doktor. Pero ang importante po, ikonsidera natin na sa larangan ng public health, kabahagi po yung pagkaroon ng hanap buhay para maiwasan ang pagkagutom. Yan po ang kinukonsidera ng ating IATF at ng ating presidente. Hindi lang yung pagbabakaso ng COVID, kung hindi yung pagbaba rin ng mga numero na nagugutom dahil sa lockdown. Hindi po lockdown ang solusyon sa COVID dahil alam na po natin paano mabuhay amidst COVID at alam na rin na po natin kung paano nga tayo makakapagbalik buhay despite itong banta ng COVID. Ito po ay sa pamamagitan ng mask, hugas, iwas at bakuna.
Meanwhile, the Metro Manila Council today has allowed accompanied minors to travel throughout the region, which is currently under the more relaxed Alert Level 3. In a press conference, Metro Manila Development Authority, or MMDA Chair Benjamin Benher Abalos Jr. said these minors, those aged below 18 years old, are allowed to travel in private vehicles and public utility vehicles such as jeepneys or trains as long as they are accompanied by an adult. Take a look.
Ito'y pirmado lahat ng mga Metro Manila mayors. The intra-zonal and interzonal travel of persons below 18 years of age shall be allowed provided that these persons shall be accompanied by a parent or an adult guardian at all times. Ang sinasabi ay papayagan, bumiyahe ang mga menor de edad. Pero kinakailangan parati silang may kasamang magulang or guardian. Kung ito'y walang kasamang magulang o guardian, sisitahin ng mga bata, no? And of course, yung kaukulang proseso ay gagawin po ito. Inuulit ko, hindi basta-bastang guardian, adult guardian.
New Zealand recorded its highest number of daily coronavirus cases since the start of the pandemic as a Delta variant outbreak that dashed the nation's COVID-0 hopes showed no signs of easing. The outbreak centered on Auckland has forced Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern to drop her core policy goal of eliminating the virus in favor of ramping up vaccination efforts.
At the beginning of this outbreak, we used to use the phrase "stay home, save lives" to describe what was needed, and that still remains the case. I know it's hard, but we are so close, and we know that vaccinations are already making a significant difference to the outbreak in Auckland, but so too are people following the rules.
The center-left leader is set to unveil a new strategy on Friday that will allow for greater freedoms once vaccination targets have been reached. Around 2/3 of the eligible population have now been fully inoculated. Health authorities announced 94 new virus cases, exceeding the previous daily record of 89 set in April last year during the first wave of COVID-19 infections. While case numbers remain low by most international standards, they have been steadily growing since the highly transmissible Delta variant was first found in New Zealand in mid-August. Ardern has conceded Delta was a game changer, spreading at a rate too fast for contact tracers to keep up.
Meanwhile, Singapore today began quarantine-free entry for fully vaccinated passengers from 8 countries, part of a plan to ease restrictions as the business hub gears up to live with the coronavirus. Singapore cannot stay locked down and closed off indefinitely. That is according to Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. He said this earlier this month when he announced a raft of measures under the Living with COVID-19 strategy. Take a look.
The Delta variant is highly infectious and has spread all over the world. Even with our whole population vaccinated, we still will not be able to stamp it out through lockdowns and SMMs. We need to update our mindsets. We should respect COVID-19, but we must not be paralyzed by fear. Let us go about our daily activities as normally as possible, taking necessary precautions and complying with SMMs. The threat of COVID is now mainly to seniors, 60 and above if you are not vaccinated, or 80 and above even if you're vaccinated. So for 98% of us, if we catch COVID-19, we can recover by ourselves at home, just as we would if we had the flu. That's why we are shifting to relying heavily on home recovery. It will be the norm for COVID cases. In particular, we must continue to reopen our borders safely. Companies and investors need to carry out regional and global business from Singapore. People working for them need to travel to earn a living.
Yeah, I think it's fine to let people in. At the end of the day, we're a country that needs travel, and if you think about locking down again, then it's also the flip side of it is it's been 2 years already. So how long more, and until when do you open up again?
Very excited about it. I think the past 2 years have been much uncertainty, and we're all bored out of our minds. I think as Singaporeans, most of us do live a pretty international, global life. Like we go traveling every other month or so, and not being able to travel for the last 2 years have been quite painful. I think we're all kind of going crazy now.
As you know, the pandemic has definitely hit majority of the businesses, and we are not spared as well. So that means more tourists into an area like ours, and definitely there'll be more opportunities to increase footfall.
The latest easing expanded a program that began with vaccinated air travel lanes with Germany and Brunei last month and is now open to passengers from the US, Canada, Britain, Denmark, France, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands. Singapore Airlines said flights under the scheme were scheduled to depart from Amsterdam, London, Los Angeles, and New York today. Passengers arriving as part of this scheme, which will include South Korea from November 15, will not have to quarantine if they have been fully vaccinated and test negative for the virus before they depart and when they arrive. To enable families to travel, Singapore has allowed entry to unvaccinated children aged 12 years and under if they are accompanied by someone flying under the scheme.
The Philippine Coast Guard on Tuesday deployed additional free ride buses along the Epifanio de Los Santos Avenue or EDSA busway to help address congestion caused by a shortage of buses plying the thoroughfare. In a Facebook post, the Interagency Council for Traffic requested these buses to specifically target congested stations. IACT Chief Manuel Gonzalez welcomed the speedy response of the PCG and noted that a greater influx of passengers is expected with the recent easing of restrictions in the National Capital Region to Alert Level 3. On Monday, the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board issued show cause orders to the two bus consortiums operating along EDSA for failing to deploy a sufficient number of buses. LTFRB Chairperson Martin Delgra III noted that as low as 120 bus units were plying EDSA on Monday, far from the agreed cap on the maximum allowable bus units of 550.
In other pandemic news, Pfizer-BioNTech submitted an authorization request to Health Canada on Monday for the use of its COVID-19 vaccine in children aged 5 to 11, the companies and the Canadian government said. Now, the authorization request is based on data from trials conducted on 268 children in this age group for whom the dosage was lowered to 10 micrograms per injection, 3 times less than the standard dose, which the company says is the preferred dose for 5 to 11-year-olds. The same Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine is approved in Canada for ages 12 and up. Health Canada said that it will only authorize the use of the vaccine if the independent and thorough scientific review of all data submitted confirms that the benefits outweigh the risks with this group.
The families or the number of families affected by severe tropical storm Maring has now climbed to 241,293 in 8 regions in the country. In an update, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, said these families are from 1,735 villages in Ilocos region, Cagayan Valley, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Western Visayas, Caraga, and the Cordillera Administrative Region. The number of affected families is equivalent to 907,189 people. Meanwhile, families classified as displaced are placed at 582 or 2,209 individuals taking shelter in 67 evacuation centers. The number of those confirmed dead has climbed to 24, with 2 injured and 15 missing. Still undergoing validation are reports of an additional 17 deaths, 3 injured and 2 missing. Houses damaged were placed at 8,210 in Ilocos region, Cagayan Valley, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Western Visayas, Caraga, and the CAR or CAR. Of this number, 7,826 are classified as partially damaged and 384 are totally damaged. Agriculture damage was estimated at 2.3 billion pesos in Ilocos region, Cagayan Valley, Central Luzon, Mimaropa, Western Visayas, Caraga, and the CAR. Meanwhile, infrastructure damage was placed at 1.9 billion pesos in Ilocos region, Cagayan Valley, Central Luzon, Mimaropa, Western Visayas, Caraga, and the CAR.
In other environment news, Switzerland's glaciers are continuing to shrink as a result of climate change, even if snowfall was heavy this year and the summer comparatively cool, according to a top scientific panel on Tuesday. Now, the volume of Swiss glaciers decreased by almost 1% in 2021, in spite of plentiful snow in winter and a pretty cool summer. The Cryospheric Commission of the Swiss Academy of Sciences said in a report. The report also said, in terms of weather, the conditions were right in 2021 to give the glaciers a breather. Unfortunately, in times of climate change, even a good year is not good enough for the glaciers. The loss of ice continued, albeit at a slower pace, despite abundant snow in the winter and a comparatively cool and mixed summer weather. The panel said the snowfall was heavier than usual in May on the Clarendon Fern Mountain of 2,890 meters or 9,500 feet. 7 meters of snow fell, the most since observations began in 1914. Nevertheless, the melt had been considerable by the end of September, and throughout Switzerland, some 400 million tons of ice had been lost over the last 12 months, almost 1% of the remaining glacier volume. The scientists said the Swiss Glacier Monitoring Network, GLAMAS, documented ice loss on all 22 glaciers. Although the losses were smaller than in recent years, the report said no gains were recorded for any of the glaciers.
The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, or FAO, Director General Pu Dongyu, and the FAO Goodwill Ambassador, European Space Agency astronaut Thomas Pesquet made a joint call to support the transformation to more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food systems to ensure enough affordable, nutritious, safe, and sustainably produced food for all on the planet. Take a look.
Welcome on board the ISS. Welcome to space.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for your calling, and I'm so glad to can talk with you.
Yes, you have FAO flag in the background. I have my own FAO flag that's flying with me on board the space station for 6 months. From here, I've tried to advocate for the topics that we have in common: insecurity, the fight against hunger and climate change, resilience of the agri-food systems. It is a privileged vantage point from up here. You can see a lot of phenomenon happening on a global scale, and I'm happy that we can take this time today. Thanks for taking the time to talk.
I hope you keep your fitness in the space and with the healthy food. That's what we are promised to offer the more healthy food to the consumers. Of course, you are one of our billions of consumers. I hope you enjoy your life with chili pepper you grow.
Our chili peppers are important for us, for our food, for our future, but also for link to nature, which is important for human beings. Even in the technological environment, very hostile, we're trying to still grow our food, grow plants, see what it takes for them to be more resilient to a harsh environment, to be applied on the ground. That's also a very emotional connection to the earth.
I hope you keep your very health, and I'm waiting for you to host you in Rome, in FAO headquarters.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to coming back on Earth and continuing to talk about these topics and talk about what the experts have to say and reinforcing their action on the field. And hopefully we can do this together.
Thank you, Thomas. And I wish you all the best. And let's share all your experience in space from a different angle to look at what we are doing here on the planet. And let's work together and to address all the challenges in this small planet. See you. All the best.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Araw-araw sa panahon ngayon, may daming tanong kailangan ng tugon. Nandito si Ali at si Papi na rin, ang smart at pretty nanay, ang siglaban ng kwentuhan. Ang sigaw ng Pinoy Nation, information, education. Ating salookin, ipakita natin ang nagsagot sa problema natin. Ano sa palagay nyo? Ano sa palagay nyo? Ano sa palagay nyo?
Welcome back. Russia suspended its diplomatic mission in NATO in retaliation after the Western Alliance expelled 8 members of its Russian mission over alleged spying. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also announced that its NATO offices in Moscow will be shuttered. Take a look.
В ответ на действия НАТО мы приостанавливаем работу своего постоянного представительства при НАТО, в том числе работу главного военного представителя, наверное, с 1 ноября, или, может быть, это займет еще несколько дней. Во-вторых, мы приостанавливаем деятельность военной миссии связи НАТО в Москве. Аккредитация ее сотрудников отзывается с 1 ноября нынешнего года. И, в-третьих, прекращается деятельность информационного бюро НАТО в Москве, которое было учреждено при посольстве Королевства Бир.
The latest row comes after NATO earlier this month stripped accreditations of 8 members of the Russian mission to the alliance, describing them as undeclared Russian intelligence officers. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said at the time that the decision to knock out the Russian representatives was not linked to any particular event, but gave no more details over the move. On Monday, Mr. Lavrov cited recent moves by NATO, saying they were no longer basic conditions for common work. He said that in case of urgent matters, NATO could liaise via the Russian ambassador in Belgium.
Japan's party leaders running in the upcoming general election take part in televised debate. The election will be held on October 31st, in which the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, or LDP, and its coalition party are widely expected to retain power. Watch this.
再生可能エネルギーが基軸であると、この中心であるということはその通りでありますが、これからデジタル化が進んで、電力使用量が爆発的に大きくなる中にあって、電力の安定供給、価格、考えた場合に、再生可能エネルギー一本足打法では、これに応えられない、ぜひ他の選択肢も必要であるということで、原子力発電もその選択肢の一つとして認めています。
できるだけ次の総選挙後にですね、こういう選挙制度を取ることで、現実的に男女同数に近い議会、国会を作っていきたいと思っています。
私は2030年までに石炭火力はゼロ、原発は直ちにゼロの決断をする、そして2030年までに10年期で 60% 最大で CO2 を削減する、大規模な省エネルギー、そして再生可能エネルギーで脱炭素の道を進むべきだと強く言いたいと思います。
具体的には0歳から高校3年生まで1人当たり一律10万円相当の給付を行います。未来応援給付と名付けました。社会全体で子どもたちを応援するというメッセージを込めています。
Meanwhile, thousands of protesters took to the streets in Santiago, Chile, to mark the second anniversary of the demonstrations against inequality that sparked the rewriting of the Constitution. Let's take a look.
Que reivindiquemos la lucha por la dignidad de los chilenos y las chilenas, porque hay muchas medidas y demandas que no se han tomado en cuenta en este país. La Constitución y terminar con el legado del dictador Pinochet no es suficiente para cambiar las cosas en Chile. Hoy día estamos frente a un presidente que es corrupto, que está metido en un sinfín de conflictos de intereses, que él es un empresario básicamente, no le interesan los derechos de las personas ni los de la gente.
Portuguese authorities seized a 5.2-ton haul of cocaine from a Spanish-registered sailing ship, arresting 2 Spanish citizens and a Peruvian on the docks. Watch this.
Procedemos à apreensão da maior quantidade de estupefacientes de cocaína num veleiro. Esta é a maior apreensão mundial jamais alguma vez tida lugar. Significa que estamos a trabalhar em rede. É também, nos últimos 15 anos, a maior apreensão de cocaína feita em território nacional.
Mas o resto...
15 anos, com o próprio diretor nacional da PJ aqui a referir, eu vou dar também em conjunto com...
In other news, the Consular outreach mission in St. Petersburg, Russia, provided services to Filipinos there. Here's Sherilyn D. Carlos, our EBC correspondent there in Russia. Take a look.
Despite of the pandemic, the Philippine Embassy in Russia conducted a 2-day outreach program dated October 16 and 17, 2021, here in Park Inn by Radisson Hotel, St. Petersburg, Russia.
The outreach programs containing the following services such as passport processing, notarial, civil registry, authentication, and embassy ID releasing. The Polo OWA Berlin, Germany also conducting the following services: OWA membership, overseas employment services, contract verification, labor counseling, welfare assistance, and information of OWA programs and services. The Philippine Embassy in Russia was headed by the two great persons, Third Secretary and Vice Consul, namely Ms. Ana Mariguera and Ms. Mary Grace L. Perpetua. They discussed about all the important matters regarding on the consular outreach programs and some of the future programs pertaining for consular services, and hear what they said.
For the past 2 days, we have organized a consular outreach program for our kababayans here in St. Petersburg and other neighboring areas. We offered services like passport processing, notarials, authentication, civil registry, embassy ID release. Our partner agency, the Department of Labor and Employment, also through the Philippine Overseas Labor Office, which is based in Berlin, also offered services to our OFWs here. More of that will be discussed later by our labor attaché, Delmer Cruz. So the aim of this consular outreach program is to bring the consular services closer to our kababayans. We know how difficult it is to travel during this time of the pandemic, so as much as possible and as much as the COVID situation would allow, the embassy organizes targeted consular outreach programs in areas with the most number of Filipinos. For this year, we have conducted consular outreach services in Yerevan, Armenia, Almaty, and Nur Sultan in Kazakhstan. We are studying the situation, especially the COVID situation in various localities here in Russia, and we aim to have more consular outreach programs as will be allowed.
For us at the embassy, this event is very important because we know that for the longest time, our kababayans here in St. Petersburg have been requesting for us to do this mission. They have told us the difficulties that they encountered because of the documents that they needed, all the services that they wanted from us. And so despite the risks to health and also resource constraints, we did our best to be able to mount and conduct a consular mission that at least adheres to the health standards, but at least the services are also very comprehensive. And we are happy to tell our public that today we were able to do that.
Attorney Delmer Cruz, Labor Attaché of the Philippine Overseas Labor Office, Berlin, Germany. He discussed the function of Polo OWA programs and services. He also mentioned the future plans of our government for all the Filipino community here in Russia. Here is my interview with him.
Ano po ba ang POLO, o yung Philippine Overseas Labor Office? POLO is the overseas operating arm of the Department of Labor and Employment. There are more than 30, about 36 POLOs worldwide in countries where there are OFWs. No? Ang twin mandate ng POLO could be summarized into two. One is employment facilitation. Pagka meron pong mga employers na gusto mag-hire ng Filipino workers, sa amin po nagsasubmit ng mga employment documents. Bine-verify po namin ang mga ito. We make sure that the employers exist. Yung terms and conditions of employment is compliant with the minimum requirements of the laws of the host country and Philippine law. So it is the first layer of protection para sa mga Pilipino na gusto magtrabaho abroad, in particular dito sa Russia. No? So dumadaan po sa amin yung mga dokumento ng mga employers na gusto mag-hire ng Filipino workers. Secondly, kapag sila po ay nandirito na, we look after their well-being, their welfare. Nagbibigay po kami ng serbisyo sa kanila para po maging maayos yung kanilang stay, yung kanilang period of employment while they are working here, yung kanilang mga karapatan at kanilang well-being ay napapangalagaan. Nandito po kami ngayon sa St. Petersburg, bahagi ng outreach mission na nilunsad ng Philippine Embassy in Moscow. Wala pa pong polo dito sa Moscow, kami po nanggaling pa sa Berlin para maghatid ng mga serbisyo ng polo at OWA. Halimbawa, yung renewal ng OWA membership. Nag-distribute din po kami ng tinatawag na e-card para yung e-card po ay mas napapacilitate yung pag-avail ng services ng mga OWA members, lalo na pag sila ay uuwi sa Pilipinas. Kami rin po ay nagbigay ng impormasyon. Nagkaroon po kami ng mini forum, mini town hall meeting dito kanina with Philcom leaders and other members of the Filipino community dito sa St. Petersburg. Nagkaroon kami ng munting talakayan tungkol sa mga programa ng pamahalaan para sa mga OFWs. May counseling session din para sa mga may nais na ikonsulta patungkol sa mga sitwasyon sa trabaho at saka yung mga pag-avail pa ng mga services. So yan po ang ginawa namin kanina. Sa panghinaharap, tinatrabaho po ng ating mahal na Secretary of Labor, Silvestre Bebot Bello III, yung pagbubukas ng labor office dito sa Russia, particular sa Moscow, para po mas malapit na at mas focus na ma-assist, no? Mabigyan ng serbisyo ang mga Filipino workers dito sa Russia at kasama na yung mga iba pang bansa na nasaklawan ng Philippine Embassy katulad ng Kazakhstan, Belarus at Armenia. So kami rin po ay nakipagdialogo sa Ministry of Labor, yung aming counterpart ng Russian government, para po mapag-usapan at harinawa ay magkaroon ng consultation at magkasundo sa isang tinatawag na bilateral labor agreement sa pagitan ng pamahalaan ng Pilipinas at ng Russia ukol sa pagpapadala, sending and receiving of Filipino workers to Russia.
Apparently, in behalf of the Filipino community here in St. Petersburg, Russia, through our representative, Mrs. Heidi Yosol, an OFW for 8 years and Vice President of Filipino Leaders Association in Russia, gave a warmest message to the Philippine Embassy in Russia. Hear what she said.
On behalf of the Filipino community here in St. Petersburg, Russia, we are grateful that the Philippine Embassy in Russia conducted a 2-day outreach program despite of the pandemic. It is listen up to our burdens traveling to Moscow as we are aware of the risk of the COVID-19 and also our opportunity to process our important document of being an OFW. I would like to thank our embassy and the Polo Berlin. They come here and conduct our OWA also to process.
Reporting here in the city of St. Petersburg, Russia, for Eagle News International, I am Cherry Carlos. We live in interesting time.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made a visit Monday to the indigenous community of Kamloops, where the remains of 215 children were found in May at a former residential school, apologizing for not coming sooner. Take a look.
Today, I went with Kukpi Kesmir to pay my respects to the graves of the Lesque, the children who went missing. No child should ever have been taken from their home and forced into the residential school system. No child should ever have been taught that their language, that their culture, that their identity has no value. It is unacceptable that this was done to your children.
From the late 19th century to the 1990s, some 150,000 First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children were forcibly enrolled at the schools across Canada. Students spent months or years isolated from their families and were physically and sexually abused by headmasters and teachers who stripped them of their culture and language. Thousands are believed to have died of disease, malnutrition, or neglect. Many more became detached or alienated. Today, those experiences are blamed for a high incidence of poverty, alcoholism, and domestic violence, as well as high suicide rates in Indigenous communities. Since the first discoveries in Kamloops 5 months ago, more than 1,200 unmarked Indigenous graves have been found at other former school sites, and searches have been launched across Canada for more. Trudeau noted that requests have poured in for federal assistance in identifying graves and recovering remains, and vowed his government will be there with as much as is necessary for communities to be able to get closure and to move forward.
The Middle East and North Africa is on track for a recovery, but rising social unrest is threatening the fragile progress of low-income economies, the International Monetary Fund said today. The MENA region, which includes Arab countries and Iran, saw real GDP growth shrink by 3.2% in 2020 due to weak oil prices and sweeping lockdowns to halt the spread of the coronavirus. Let's hear more.
Well, the region is going through recovery in 2021. And since the beginning of the year, we see progress in economic performance. This recovery is not the same in all countries. It's uncertain and uneven. Uneven because of the divergence in vaccination. Uncertain because of some of the recent developments, the increase in prices. We are in the process of updating the information, assessing the current situation, as well as also discussing with the authorities what are their reform plans. Of course, we all know that Lebanon is facing huge multiple-pronged crisis that requires a comprehensive reform package supported by the various stakeholders in Lebanon, with also strong assistance by the international community, technical assistance, and financial assistance. Well, what Lebanon needs today is to have a comprehensive reform package that will allow the economy to recover, address the debt issues, address also the financial sector stability issue, help Lebanon curb inflation and stabilize currency, and deal with scars that have also inflicted the Lebanese economy after the blast of August 2020.
Greece handed over the Olympic flame to organizers of the 2022 Beijing Winter Games a day after the lighting ceremony was disrupted by activists calling for the event to be postponed. Hellenic Olympic Committee Chief Spyros Kapralos gave the Olympic torch to the Vice President of Beijing 2022 and Vice President of the Chinese Olympic Committee, Yu Zaiqing, at the Panathinaikos Stadium in Athens, where the ancient games were revived in 1896. The ceremony was held without spectators, with mainly officials and media in attendance. Earlier Tuesday, activists against the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics urged the IOC to postpone the event, arguing that China was perpetrating genocide against Uyghurs and Tibetans. During the lighting ceremony in Olympia on Monday, the activists unfurled a Tibetan flag and a banner that said, "No genocide at the Games." A similar protest was held at the Acropolis in Athens on Sunday.
In other sports news, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said on Monday that around 96% of players in the league have now been vaccinated against COVID-19 despite union opposition to a league-wide mandate. Take a look. Speaking to reporters on the eve of the new NBA season, which tips off on Tuesday, Silver said the number of vaccinated players had increased and was expected to go higher after the season starts. Issues around vaccine hesitancy have loomed over the build-up to the 2021-2022 season, most notably with Brooklyn Nets star Kyrie Irving effectively being sidelined over his refusal to get vaccinated. A city regulation in New York requires individuals in public indoor spaces to be vaccinated, meaning that Irving is unable to play home game for the Nets.
Finally, in our news, London's renowned waxwork museum, Madame Tussauds, opened this week its first outpost in the Arab world in Dubai, which hopes to attract millions of tourists to Expo 2020.
Madame Tussauds as a brand, we exist all over the world. So we have wax attraction in Europe, in America, all across Asia. Dubai is our first Middle Eastern attraction. It's the 25th edition. So the figure selection is a process that took about 18 months, where we do extensive research, we do case studies, focus groups. We have chosen the talents that are relevant and popular in the region based on all this research that we have done. We have opened our doors on 14th of October this year, very close to Expo 2020. We expect, many visitors locally and internationally to come in, and I think the product it has a great diversity, a great balance of international and regional figures. So there's something for everyone here.
The Dubai branch displays 60 sculptures of global stars, including football sensation Lionel Messi and pop singer Rihanna, and about 15 from the region, including Lebanese pop stars Nancy Ajram and Maya Diab. With only limited oil reserves, the Emirate of Dubai has been focusing on the development of tourism and the entertainment sector. Dubai is counting on the 6-month Expo 2020 Dubai, which opened on October 1st after a one-year delay, to attract millions of visitors and boost its pandemic-hit economy. I want to visit one. Okay, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. The news continues tomorrow. I'm CJ Hero.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live in interesting times.